In just a few months, another Polish man, also slightly balding, will be named a saint. And I don't mean me, not just yet. Of course, I am talking about John Paul II, also known by his baptismal name as Karol Wojtyła. And when it happens, will be one of only 2 churches in this state that will be able to say a saint was in our midst. In 1969, then the Archbishop of Krakow came here for a short visit. He stayed at the rectory. He prayed in this church. He preached in this church. And I believe that he has been guiding us through stormy waters of the last years. So I'm very much looking forward to calling John Paul II Saint John Paul II. In November, we talk a lot about saints. November 1st is All Saints' Day, or All Hallows, as they used to say in English. Halloween comes from the eve of All Hallows' Day. So November as the month begins with all the saints. And John Paul II in a few months will be included in that esteemed company. There are many, many saints, hundreds if not thousands. And Jesus today spoke himself in the gospel about 3 of those saints. He says, Moses called God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. These 3 men, these 3 patriarchs are probably the most important figures of the Old Testament, of the Jewish Bible. Abraham, as a matter of fact, is claimed by Jews, Muslims, and Christians as the father of all 3 of our faiths. But if you think about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, there are 3 very different characters. And when I say characters, I do mean that. Even though we think of them as very esteemed, very important saints and patriarchs, they were not perfect. I would say they could be very difficult to live with. Abraham, just think about it for a moment, left behind all his business career. He was a rich man and decided to immigrate to a different country, far, far away, not unlike many of your ancestors. But when he immigrated, he not only takes his wife and family and slaves and the cattle and mistresses, more than one. And if he was a politician today, he would have to have a press conference once a week apologizing for that mistress and this one and that adventure and that one. So no, Abraham wasn't perfect. He wasn't faithful to his wife all the time. Today we'll be ashamed of him having slaves. And yet, he is one of the patriarchs, one of the founding fathers of 3 major religions. And Isaac almost lost his life because of Abraham. Remember the story when Abraham thought that God is asking him to kill his son? Sometimes to be a saint means to risk your life. And Isaac knew that firsthand. Or the story from the first reading from the book of the Maccabees. 7 brothers died as martyrs because they would choose obedience to God's law rather than obeying king. So sometimes being a saint means being a rich man with plenty of slaves and mistresses. And sometimes being a saint means risking all you have to be faithful to God's law. 2 very different stories. And Jacob, he was a character too. He got to be a patriarch by lying and cheating. He was not firstborn, so he should not be the head of the household, but he lied to his blind father, pretending to be his older brother. So he got what he wanted. Again, I see another press conference happening there one day. 3 very different saints, 3 very different stories. And then today I'm talking also about Pope John Paul II. Another character, if I may say so myself. Being from Poland, I know how Polish single men can be very difficult. Or how Polish men, period, can be difficult. And those of you ladies who are married to one, I see you nodding. He certainly will be remembered for great deeds and accomplishments of his life. He helped to liberate half of Europe from the shackles of the communism. He was the first pope ever to apologize for the church. It took 200 years in a Polish man to say, "I'm sorry for the church." But was he perfect? If you know Polish man, you know there is no such thing as a perfect Polish man. Or should I say a perfect man? He was not perfect, and yet he was saint. Being a saint doesn't mean being molded out of the same cookie cutter, identical, sweet, cute, ending up on the side altar in our church. Some of us, myself included, would need a bigger stand for our statue. But being a saint means, despite your imperfections, despite your shortcomings, living your life to the fullest, the way God intended. Jesus says God is the God of the living, not of the dead. You've got to be living to be a saint. You need to live your life and not sleep through it. You need to experience your life to the fullest to be a saint. And yes, you will make mistakes as you go through your life. And yes, you'll be like Abraham or lying Jacob or imperfect popes of the past. But it doesn't mean that you could not become a saint. As a matter of fact, you've got to be a saint. Because only saints get to heaven. And no, I don't mean the players of the sports team. I mean people who live their lives to the fullest and give testimony to God's love in their daily lives. Za kilka miesięcy nasz rodak Jan Paweł II będzie ogłoszony świętym. W kwietniu przyszłego roku Karol Wojtyła zostanie świętym. Wtedy będziemy jednym z 2 kościołów w całym stanie Missouri, który będzie mógł się pochwalić: tutaj w naszych murach był kiedyś święty. Bo w 1969 roku odwiedził nas ówczesny arcybiskup Krakowa, Karol Wojtyła. Spał u nas na plebanii, odprawiał mszę w tym kościele, modlił się razem z naszymi parafianami. I mówię o świętym wkrótce już Janie Pawle II, dlatego że listopad to miesiąc w sposób szczególny poświęcony świętym. Miesiąc, który zaczął się od Dnia Wszystkich Świętych. Dzisiaj nawet Jezus mówi o 3 świętych Starego Testamentu: Abraham, Izaak i Jakub. 3 patriarchowie Biblii żydowskiej, 3 najważniejsi przedstawiciele Starego Testamentu. 3 święci, a jednak bardzo różni od siebie. Abraham, święty emigrant, który pozostawił swój dom, swoją ojczyznę, by spędzić życie na emigracyjnej tułaczce. Podobnie jak wielu z nas. Ale nie był on doskonałym człowiekiem. Miał kochanki, miał niewolników. Jego życie nie było doskonałe ani perfekcyjne. A jednak dlatego, że poszedł za głosem Bożym, jest świętym. Izaak to syn Abrahama, o mało co nie stracił życia, bo ojciec myślał, że Bóg oczekuje od niego ofiary ze swojego syna. Czasami świętość oznacza zaryzykować własne życie. Czasami może nawet stracić je, tak jak 7 braci z dzisiejszego pierwszego czytania, którzy oddali swoje życie, by być wierni prawom boskim. I oczywiście Jakub, patriarcha Izraela, który był kłamczuchem, który został patriarchą dlatego, że ojca wykiwał, oszukał swego ojca, bo nie był najstarszym, nie był pierworodnym synem, a jednak też jest świętym patriarchą. Świętość to nie znaczy perfekcyjność. Święci nie są ulepieni każdy z tej samej gliny. Święci nie muszą mieć takiego samego życia. Starczy popatrzeć się w naszym kościele na nasze piękne witraże, na figury świętych. Są wśród nich kobiety i mężczyźni. Są wśród nich młodzi i starsi. Jest święta babcia Anna, jest święty młodzieniec Stanisław. Są królowe jak Jadwiga i Elżbieta za mną. Są proste kobiety i zakonnice jak święta Tereska od Dzieciątka Jezus. Świętość czeka na każdego z nas. I to nie znaczy, że musimy skończyć na bocznym ołtarzu albo na witrażu, ale to znaczy, że musimy żyć nasze życie w pełni. Jezus w Ewangelii mówi dzisiaj: Bóg jest Bogiem żywych, a nie umarłych. Święci to są ludzie, którzy żyją pełnią życia. Tak, zdarzą nam się grzechy, zdarzą nam się upadki, błędy, ale to nie znaczy, że nie możemy być świętymi. W każdym dniu naszego życia, jakikolwiek jest nasz zawód, jakkolwiek wyglądamy, jakimkolwiek językiem mówimy, jesteśmy powołani do świętości. I ta świętość będzie różnie się objawiała w życiu każdego z nas. Ale tak długo, jak chcesz być świętym, jak starasz się żyć pełnią życia, tak długo będzie dla Ciebie miejsce tutaj w naszym Kościele. We are in one of the churches that is filled with saints. If you look around yourselves, and I know you do every Sunday, there are countless statues, stained glass windows, and murals of saints. and not two of them are identical. There are no cookie-cutter saints. There are men and women, young and old, among our saints. There are queens and there are beggars. There are bishops and there are grandfathers and fathers. I'm looking at Saint Anne on your right-hand side, who was a happy grandmother of Jesus, mother of Mary. She was not a nun, not a priest, not a queen, just a simple, happy grandma. What a great way to become a saint. And you know what? I have no doubt my grandma is a saint too. And then we have Queen Hedwig and Queen Elizabeth behind us in stained glass windows. Queens can be saints as well. You don't need to be poor and desolate to be a saint. It's okay to be rich, as long as you try to be saint as well. There are men in our church who are saints, like Saint Adalbert, the first missionary to Poland, who converted first Polish king Mieszko I, seen in this stained glass window. There is Saint Stanislaus, our patron saint, whom I call the patron saint of holy disobedience. For he disobeyed his father all his life in order to follow his vocation, in order to live his life the way God wanted him to live his life. And then we have Saint Joseph, that I'm always feeling sorry about. Imagine being Saint Joseph. You get engaged, you find a beautiful young girl to be your wife, and then you find she's pregnant, not with your baby, and then you end up never having sex with her. That's at least the Roman Catholic teaching. So if you believe Roman Catholic teaching, I'm sorry for Saint Joseph. But yet, he is a saint. And there will be other saints, Peter and Moses and Elijah on that stained glass window, and King David on the choir loft. There are so many different ways to live up your sainthood. There are so many ways to find your way to heaven. Do you need to be a priest? No. Do you need to be a nun? No. Do you need to be straight or white? No. Do you need to be young? No. Do you need to be Roman Catholic in good standing? No. By the way, Saint Anne never was Catholic. Never was Moses, Abraham, and Isaac. What you need to do is to live your life to the fullest, the way God intends you to live. To find out what is God's plan for you and implement that plan every day of your life. Yes, you will make mistakes. Yes, you will be imperfect. Even the popes make mistakes. But as long as you are trying your best to live your life, to follow God's call in your life, no matter who you are, no matter what you look like, no matter how you live out that call to sainthood, there will be room for you in this church.